Ladies and gentlemen, today we are doing our next iteration of the Beat Them All series. I am going to be going over all of the popular Series 8 Legendary Cores, Zacian, Kyogre, Groudon, you name it. I'm going to talk about their strengths a little bit, but more importantly, I'm going to be talking about their big weaknesses so that when you start building your team for the Players Cup 4 qualifiers, you can start putting the pieces together and realizing that you have an answer or a check to every single one of these popular legendary teams, and hopefully that will get you the little bump you need to qualify for the Players Cup 4, which I hope you all do. So guys, let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our first core, or pretty much Pokemon. We're going to be talking about Zacian, but we're also going to be lumping it in with Thundurus. Thundurus is such a powerhouse mon in this format. It is very hit or miss though, because it does have some blatant weaknesses that if you can abuse, it really does just waste its Dynamax, and then you can slowly clean up the team. So let's get into it. Okay, so I think it's very obvious why Zacian is so good. Fairy Steel, some of the best typing in the game. Its stats are absurd. It gets a free attack boost, and then with Behemoth Blade, it does a ton of damage every attack, and it does double against Dynamax, which means it almost feels like it's a counter to Dynamax, and it can't Dynamax itself. So I think it's very evident why Zacian is so good. Frees up your team building. It's good against all teams. It was the most used restricted in the NA Players Cup qualifiers, and excuse me, not qualifiers, but the bracket. But yeah, so Zacian is amazing, and then Thundurus is such an amazing partner because it scares off Intimidate. You know what I mean? You want to intimidate Zacian, but intimidating Defiant Thundurus can spell doom for your team, so they are just a wonderful combo. We've seen them time and time again together. Like I said, let's talk about Thundurus first. What are Thundurus's big weaknesses? It's that it has to Dynamax to be a good Pokemon, in my opinion. And like, I know that that's really strong wording to say, but it's honestly how I feel. And I think a lot of people would agree that Thundurus is scary when it's Dynamax, and when it's not, Wild Charge takes recoil. It's super easy to KO. It has very, very bad bulk stats. Fly is not a very good move. Superpower is not the best move. And then, you know, Protect or things like U-Turn, Crunch, they're not great moves. So pretty much, guys, we need to just weather the Dynamax of Thundurus. And then maybe he's got some speed boosts and attack boosts after that, but then after that, he is not doing so hot. So things that can really stop Thundurus in its tracks are priority screens from Grimmsnarl. And I'm going to let you guys know right now, support dark types are going to come into play in a bunch of teams. Grimmsnarl, Umbreon, Incineroar, they are all phenomenal in this format. So priority screens, it's going to weaken Thundurus's damage immediately, making it so you can sponge the Dynamax turns that much easier. Things such as sleep, whether that's sleep powder from Venusaur, or even a Koba Berry Amoonguss, or Yawn from things like Umbreon, you just put Thundurus to sleep and it's not doing good. Status conditions as a whole: burns, burning, jealousy, Torkoal. Another amazing one, Will-O-Wisp from things like Sableye, Spectrier, you name it. These are all things that just completely shut down Thundurus instantly, as long as you hit the move, right? So I think that those are huge things to beat Thundurus. You don't want to intimidate it. You just want to weather the Dynamax turns with all those things I mentioned, and then you should be pretty good to go against Thundy. And then next, let's talk about Zacian. Now, pretty much well-placed intimidates do extremely well against Zacian. Now, didn't we just talk about how it's paired with Thundurus? Yes, but we can weather Thundurus, we can take it out, we can KO it. It's not very bulky at all. And then it's when the intimidates. Late game things like late game Landorus, late game Incineroar are phenomenal against Zacian. And all those things I talked about prior are great against Zacian too. Will-O-Wisp, screens to bulk up your team, etc. And then another thing, Zacian can't Dynamax. So the fact that we can abuse that it cannot max guard. These are things with massive hyper offensive moves. Things like Charizard G Max Wildfire, Venusaur Max Quake, Vine Lash, these kinds of things. And fake out. That is the biggest one. You can fake out Zacian no matter what. Of course, Psychic Terrain, whatever, but it cannot max guard. You never have to have this variable of, is it going to Dynamax or not? You can always fake it out. And maybe you know it's going to protect from the fake out. These are abusable things. Fake out Dragon Dance, fake out Swords Dance, fake out Tailwind. You can abuse the fact that Zacian cannot protect through fake outs and giant max moves. So I'd like to say specific Pokemon that are really good against Zacian Thundurus and excuse me, are Groudon, Torkoal, Charizard, Metagross, Grimmsnarl, and Porygon 2. So guys, right here, I usually do a little visual notepad. I kind of forgot to start typing it up during that discussion, but here it is for everyone watching the video. Take a screenshot, whatever you want to do. I just typed up everything that I talked about, and I even put in that Foul Play is really good, and then the Sun as a whole is extremely good against both Zacian and Thundurus IMO. Next up, guys, is one of the most common, pretty much, combinations in the whole format. It is Kyogre Tornadus. You know, people love their Kyogre Timmy jokes because it is a relatively easy to pilot team. You know, click Tailwind, click Water Spout, a profit, you know what I mean? But obviously in Pokemon, everything is a little bit deeper than that. But let's dive in. So why is Kyogre Tornadus so good? Tornadus, priority, Tailwind. Boosts Kyogre's speed instantly, and then Kyogre drops rain boosted max HP off of its massive special attack, Water Spouts, on the enemy team. So obviously this team just shoves huge water damage down your throat and can just totally KO you all the time. So these are things you got to watch out for. You've got to be prepared. And I think the first easy one is heavy water resist / immunities. Now, what do I mean by heavy? I do not think that Pokemon that singularly resist water are strong enough. Rotom Wash, for example, takes like 50-60% from Water Spout, not Dynamax, of course. That's disgusting. That's not enough. I think you need things that quad resist Kyogre. I think that mons like this are Kingdra. I think even Ludicolo is being overlooked a little bit right now. And then Gastrodon, things with like Storm Drain and stuff like that that are literally immune. That could be Lapras as well with Water Absorb. I think that these are great Pokemon against them. Let me type those up. Now, I think that this is an obvious one, but Weather Control. Now, the thing about Weather Control is it's most commonly Sun. You know, you put the Sun up. Kyogre in the Sun does really poorly, okay? Now, Groudon in the rain doesn't really care. I think Kyogre in the sand doesn't really care, but I think the Sun is the one that really hammers Kyogre's weaknesses in. So I think Weather Control, usually Sun, and then this is a big one, guys. Venusaur, I could say G-Max Venusaur, however. Resists all common attacks, super effective retaliation, I guess. The thing is, guys, is Kyogre is most commonly holding 2 water moves. It's got its Water Spout. It's got maybe Scald or Origin Pulse for when it's not at max HP anymore and it still needs to do big water damage. And then it's usually running Thunder for the, you know, to hit those other water types that we talked about. Maybe even Lapras to hit opposing Kyogres, etc. So they're usually not running an Ice move and can't really afford to. So this is kind of why we've seen Venusaur do so well. Resists all of Kyogre's attacks, destroys it with a Vine Lash, gets the Vine Lash set up relatively safely, and then lots of Venusaurs are usually holding things like Koba Berry to counter that Tornadus that really can't do that much damage back. So Venusaur is amazing. And then this is a big one, guys. Speed Control. Your own Tailwind. Yeah, let's put this. Your own Tailwind or Trick Room way harder. Okay. So, what do I mean by this? Your own Tailwind. Kyogre is only based 90 speed. Tornadus sets up the Tailwind, and then you set up the Tailwind with your own Tornadus, your own Whimsicott. All you have to be is a base 91, I guess, or faster, and you will outspeed the Kyogre. You will shut down the Water Spout damage, and it opens up a lot of situations, positive situations for you, is if you have your own priority Tailwind into Kyogre. And then I put Trick Room because if you can get Trick Room up against Kyogre with like proper, you know, sweeping mons that can put on a lot of pressure, it's great. But guys, Trick Room up against Kyogre is way easier said than done. Like I said, Trick Room is just way harder to get up because you have to take a full power Water Spout, and then Kyogre could just like decide to Dynamax that next turn. So Personally, unless you've got amazing answers to the Kyogre, or your Trick Room setter is legitimately immune to water, like Water Absorb Gelatin or something like that, I do think it is quite tricky to get it to work against Kyogre. So I don't really recommend it, but if you can get it up safe, it is a good option. And then this is kind of a cheesy one, but I think Whimsicott is obviously the best Tailwind setter instantly, but then I think Mental Herb Tornadus is actually really good. Because, you know, in the Dynamax hyper offensive meta, people got to go crazy, and I can see opposing Torns, you know, protect the Kyogre, go for the taunt into your Tornadus for the 50-50. If they win the speed tie, then they can Tailwind the next turn, and then they are in a phenomenal position. So things like Mental Herb, Tornadus, and Whimsicott, I think are very, very good against Kyogre. So resist the water attacks, or boost up your speed and then hit the Kyogre, or run a Sun team or Sun mode to weaken the Kyogre as much as you can. Okay guys, now Groudon or Sun modes, Torkoal, Venusaur, Charizard with Groudon, these kinds of stuff. This is one of the most hot, pun not intended, come up teams right now. It was pretty much the counter to the meta. I explained that all these Pokemon are amazing against Zacian, and I explained that Venusaur played really well, and Charizard even played really well, can do a ton of work against Zacian and Kyogre teams. So this is kind of the most obvious counter meta team that we're seeing. Obviously, the meta is going to continue to adapt, but Sun is extremely good right now, and it has to be respected. So what can we do against the Sun? Now, I would like to say that the first thing is weather control. Okay, so weather control seems extremely obvious. Yeah, of course I don't want them to have the Sun up. But the thing about this team is, contrarily different than the Kyogre teams, is that these teams really, really thrive in the Sun. I am talking about literally Chlorophyll Venusaur and Solar Power Charizard. These Pokemon directly benefit and gain massive stats and boost in the Sun. So if you can shut these down, whether it's playing your own Kyogre really well, or Pokemon that are really good at Dynamaxing and using these moves, max Rock Falls off of things like Tyranitar, Landorus, these are all amazing things. Or things with big max geysers, water types that can sponge the blow, take the damage, and then put up the rain, put up the rain, put up the rain with max geysers. These are huge things that we can really benefit from. So I'm gonna put max geysers and max rock falls to control weather. Another big thing, guys, that I think works really well is Tailwind, yet again. Tailwind to outspeed Venusaur and Charizard. So Venusaur is only a base 80 speed Pokemon, and then when it's under Chlorophyll, it's like as if it's under Tailwind. Just like Kyogre, you Tailwind, you just need to be faster than base 80. You can KO that Venusaur with certain Pokemon that are really strong, Calyrex, Charizard, things like that. And then you can be faster than the Charizard with things such as max Rockfall, max Geysers from like Dragapult or something. Like, Tailwind is a very nice boon to have against these Groudon teams to force change the weather or to KO these really scary G-Max Pokemon. Papa Kitty Cat Incineroar. It resists both grass and fire. Those are the biggest damaging moves coming off of this team, except for, of course, Groudon's ground moves, but Incineroar's Intimidate usually makes it so it can survive any kind of Precipice Blades, Max Quake, you name it. Only with a little bit of HP, but it can do it. So Incineroar is amazing. Fake Out, super good into Venusaur. It kind of negates that Sleep Powder option. It really forces them. When they're in front of Incineroar, they kind of feel the need to max because of the scary Fake Out. You can fake out the Torkoal from the Yawns, these kind of things. Snarls and Parting Shots. Incineroar's typing, Inherent Bulk, Intimidate. You guys can see why it's one of the best Pokemon of all time, and it does do very well against Sun. You need to watch out for Groudon getting powered up with Swords Dance. You need to watch out for maybe ground moves from the Charizard if they are running the Max Quake off of Scorching Sand. But that is something you need to watch out for. But Incineroar is amazing against this team if you can play it really well. And then another big boon of Incineroar is it can afford to run Shucka Berry or something like Safety Goggles. Now, a lot of Pokemon can't exactly afford to run these items, but Incineroar is already inherently good against Sun, in my opinion, if you play it really well. But then you can run the Shuckleberry to be even better against Groudon or Charizard. Or you can run the Goggles to feel extremely safe in front of Venusaur, right? So I think that great items, great moves, great everything. Incineroar played well, is amazing against Sun, and the flexibility of the item is also really, really good. Now, another one that I think is really good against this team comp is Dragons. Now, I memed about it in my last video. Everyone thinks Goodra is the ultimate counter. I think Goodra is not so good. But your Dragon legendaries, whether these are things like, I think Palkia has a pretty inherently good Sun matchup, but pretty much the most important one I think is Dragapult. Dragapult outspeeds all of these things. Max Airstream, it outspeeds Venusaur. I kind of explained this in my last video from Series 7, which is going to be relevant even for this Players' Cup. But Dragapult resists all of these big attacks. Max Wormwind to drop Groudon's attack. It could be running Max Geyser, Max Airstream, you name it. Big, scary Dragon Pokemon can be very, very good against Sun teams. Another big meta up-and-comer. This is obviously one of the most obvious Sun counters in the game, but it kind of took the back seat here in Series 8, but it's coming back. Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat resists every popular move from Charizard, every popular move from Torkoal and Venusaur, except for like Max Ooze and Body Press, whatever. And then Groudon can't hit it with the ground moves. It has Levitate. It's got Rock Slide, but sure. Rotom Heat is obviously a very, very, very good Sun counter. Like I said, resists all the types, and it's a great mod. So, resist most everything, and can clap back super effectively. Let's go. Rotom Heat is great. Played really well. It is extremely frustrating to play against. This is a very volatile counter to this team, but it works. It is extremely good, and it is your own Sun. Opposing Sun teams. Charizard, roast. Venusaur, Torkoal with Max Airstream, Groudon with the fire moves. Venusaur messes up Groudon big time. Max Quakes into Torkoal. The thing is like Sun is good against Sun. It's really hard to play, but you can mitigate and make your like mirror match that much better with certain techs, such as like Assault Vest. Charizard, I think, is a like kind of, you know, behind the scenes one, or like Charty Berry Charizard. You could even be like Goggles Zard. This is getting a little bit much, but opposing Sun is very good. If you just want to go with a standard Sun team and think I'm gonna win the mirror match, I'm just gonna win speed ties, so be it. But there are little variables that you can go in to this team to try and kind of make the Sun match even better, and I think that those items on Charizard can make the Sun match even more in your favor. The last legendary I think that's really good against Sun teams is actually Ho-Oh. I think Ho-Oh does great against Torkoal, Venusaur, and Charizard. The problem Pokemon that Ho-Oh has is Groudon, having to be afraid of those rock moves. So Ho-Oh played well, can be a great Sun counter team. We're going to get into Ho-Oh a little bit later. Ho-Oh does have a lot of weaknesses, unfortunately, in this format, but this is one of Ho-Oh's best matchups, and if you expect to see a lot of Sun, you want to take the risk, you can make an amazing Ho-Oh team and just clap some Sun teams for real. Guys, I hope you guys are enjoying the video, and I just want to ask you guys to please like this video if you guys are enjoying, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We do a lot of fun stuff here, lots of educational VGC content, so just a little PSA in the middle of the vid, so please don't forget to do that. It would help me out a ton. Thank you guys. So guys, this is the only non-legendary core I'm going to talk about in this video because I've already went over Coalossal, Regigigas, Sun, all these kinds of stuff in my other video, but Coalossal is amazing in this format, and I just want to pretty much give you guys a PSA that you guys should be prepared. So biggest thing is against Coalossal, I think that you need to have a surefire way to KO Cole turn 1. Okay, Coalossal is so absurdly good because it can just get KO'd immediately after clicking the Volcalith, and then it can still win because like these G-Max moves are so absurdly imbalanced. But I mean, if you let the Cole live for more than one turn, he still gets the like Volcalith damage up, and then he's going to do a ton of damage. So you need to stop the big damage threat as soon as you possibly can. So I like follow me / extremely bulky max quake. Okay, so things like Assault Vest Landorus are not going to die to Surf plus Volcalith into the Landorus with no support. It's going to live. You will max quake the Coalossal back and you will knock it out. Or you use Follow Me with a Max Quake to knock out the Coalossal. Stuff like this. I don't recommend Max Geyser as much just because the Coalossal could Surf and then Max Flare, put up the Sun, survive your water move, and then get up one more attack the next turn. It's not quite as safe because if they Max Flare, they might survive your Max Geyser and they get one more turn. So Max Quake, I think, is the most surefire way to take out the Coalossal. This is just one idea. There are a ton of different ideas that you could KO the Coalossal with. So how about another one is Tailwind plus Max Quake or Max Geyser. Okay, these are more surefire ways to get the kill. Now, this isn't going to work into Urshifu. Urshifu will Aqua Jet faster than you, and then Coalossal most likely will outspeed whatever you're trying to pull off, even under the Tailwind. So you're gonna have to play that by a case-to-case basis, but that's where you can actually abuse the Max Geyser, is because if you go faster, it can't set up the Sun. So your team, I think, should have a surefire way to kill Coalossal. I think it's pretty obvious, but alas. Now, this is a kind of weird one, but I think it's also very good. Your own weakness policy procced by Surf. Okay, so let's say you lead Tyranitar or something, right? Your weakness policy. He clicks Surf. He's activating both Coal's and Tyranitar's weakness policy, right? There's a lot of different ones that you can do this with. I think T-Tar is like historically one of the best ones, but yeah, you can kind of create a strategy involving that, and then use that to your advantage against Coalossal, right? A bit of a cheesy one, but I do want to, let you guys know that it is an option. And then specific Pokemon that I think can do the job very well against Coalossal teams. Okay, I think that Landorus T, when played extremely well, can shine in this matchup a ton. I think that Rotom Wash is extremely good in this matchup as well. And then I even think Gastrodon, just because it has both the Max Quake and the Max Geyser options, I think it's great, but almost every single Coalossal team is going to have a Rillaboom on it, and Gastrodon really doesn't like Rillaboom. Rotom Wash can sponge the hit. Landorus does well against Rillaboom, but yeah, Gastrodon's a bit of a cheeky one, but Gastrodon's there. And then Groudon. I can't exactly sit here and recommend that you lead Venusaur and Charizard and Torkoal and stuff, but Groudon is bulky enough to take a hit, especially if it's supported by screens or Follow Me, and then it will just drop a fat Max Quake into the Coalossal, and you can attempt that sweep, right? So I think that these are 4 mons. Gastrodon's a bit cheeky, but I think Groudon is actually pretty solid into Coal. And then lastly, it's pretty much what I said at the top, but I want to hammer it in, is that you guys need a game plan mapped out prior. I think that this is one of the most flowchart-esque teams of all time. I genuinely think Coalossal is like extremely flowchartable for both the Coalossal player and the Coalossal opponent. So this is a team that you guys need to have an exact, I will do this against Dragapult, Urshifu, Coalossal. I have an answer, and I know the repercussions. But I just want to say, watch out for Dragapult's extremely annoying moves. It's so crazy that they can just light screen, not Surf, take your hit, and then they kill you. They can Breaking Swipe your physical attacks. They can Will-O-Wisp you, all these kinds of things. Dragapult's really annoying, but be prepared and have a game plan mapped out prior. Guys, next up is Calyrex Shadow. This Pokemon is obviously extremely good because of how absurd its stats are. You can see how much damage it does, gets boosts up, completely sweeps teams, expanding force, etc. You name it. This is the epitome of hyper offense in Series 8, and it is extremely good because it doesn't have to Dynamax. Astral Barrage, Expanding Force are just insane moves. It just like completely chunks your team, comes in with a Dynamax in the back, and you're in trouble. So this is a Pokemon that you definitely need to be prepared for. And I think that the biggest first piece of advice is those support dark types we talked about earlier. They resist both stabs of Calyrex and can OHKO back, usually. Okay, yeah. These are amazing Pokemon. And what I'm talking about is when I say things such as Umbreon, the Papa Incineroar, Grimmsnarl, even though it doesn't commonly hold dark moves, Spirit Break, Screens, Tricking items, Thunder Wave, you name it, these are all amazing options in the Calyrex. So I like those. And then finally, Urshifu Single Strike with the Sucker Punch. Now, you of course need to be aware of Psychic Terrain with Urshifu, but these other 3 bulky support dark types are phenomenal. They are amazing against a ton of teams. I think most like not hyper offense teams should be running one of Umbreon, Incineroar, or Grimmsnarl, honestly. But moving on, Snarl does extremely well versus this squad. Now, obviously, Snarl is great against Calyrex, does a ton of damage, lowers its special attack. Whimsicott gets a special attack drop. Indeedee gets a special attack drop. These teams commonly run like things like Regieleki as well. But I need to warn you guys, but may be too slow tempo. Now, what do I mean by tempo is Calyrex is going to smack me with a massive attacked move. And then I'm going to Snarl it. And then it's going to smack me again at hopefully just -1 with another banger of an attack. And then I'm going to Snarl again. So do you see where I'm going with this? Is that Snarl might not be effective enough immediately. It's slow. It can miss, I guess. But they might just be able to blast through you, get the like Grimmsnarl boost up, and stuff like that. So Snarl is great, but you do need to be careful about making sure that you're not going to take too much damage in the process, if that makes sense. So just be aware of that. I think Grimmsnarl's screens are phenomenal, just like that in the top of the list. And then terrain control. This is a little bit of a less obvious one, but Calyrex thrives in the Psychic Terrain. It gets the expanding force boost. It gets just the Psychic Terrain boost to its damage, and it cannot be sucker punched by Urshifu, for example, right? But this is a big thing, is that there are some inherent dis-synergies with this, with Psychic Terrain and this team in particular. So this is a kind of hard to explain concept, so I typed it out prior, but having terrain control against this team is very beneficial. If you can stop Calyrex from getting the expanding force boost, not being able to fake out Whimsicott, or not being able to sucker punch Calyrex by getting rid of the Psychic Terrain is a great boon for this matchup. But Whimsicott on this team, while it is extremely common, it does have a inherent dyssynergy with Psychic Terrain itself, which is it cannot trick like a Trick Room or something like that. Excuse me, it can't taunt a Trick Room, it can't trick an eject button, etc. So there is this weird dichotomy going on these teams. So I'm pretty much saying to be aware of all possibilities. If you lead something that can fake out the Whimsicott, they may switch into Indeedee, but you can then know that they cannot taunt you or trick you an eject button in that same turn. So this is a hyper offense team. Maybe people are kind of think it's brain dead and they just click buttons, but there's a lot of thinking going on to the possibilities of what can happen. So always think about that. Keep all options in your head. Next up, guys, is a popular core. It's gaining popularity, let's put it that way, is Calyrex Ice Rider. Calyrex Ice Rider, huge stab ice moves, insanely good abilities, getting rid of things like Shucca Berry, Yachi Berry, stuff like that. Horrifying Pokemon. Its stats are insane. So let's get into it. I want to help you guys counter this Pokemon. And very, very obvious, but it has to be said, do your best to stop the TR from both. This is the scary thing. Mimikyu is the primary Trick Room setter, but Calyrex can also just set it up itself. So you guys need to do your best to stop these Pokemon from getting up the Trick Room. Of course, it is easier said than done. I'm going to give you guys some tips right now, but this is something that you need to be aware of, is maybe you want to let them set up the Trick Room if you've got amazing counters, things like Torkoal, maybe even like Stakataka, maybe even like Escavalier if you're feeling like real crazy. But yeah, you need to keep the Trick Room option in mind. And if you are not a Trick Room bulky team, you cannot let this go up or you're going to be in big, big trouble. And then the next part is while still being wary of the Shadow Sneak outside of TR. I think that this is one of the biggest strengths of this team is you have to prepare for a lot of different options. I mean, you have to prepare for like multiple options, and then they are proactive about it. That's a big thing with Dynamax, Dragapult, Coalossal, Sun. That's kind of how these teams operate, is you have to be prepared for a certain thing, and then they can just switch it up. And yeah, you need to be able to stop the Trick Room while being prepared for them to just turn one, Shadow Sneak the Calyrex, set up Trick Room, and then you're in trouble, man. So yeah, it's hard, but let's get into how we can kind of mitigate this team. Now, Intimidate Cycling is still very strong versus this team. Now, the thing is like Calyrex, if it gets attack boosts up, yeah, your Intimidate is effectively not doing a lot. But if you don't let them get that KO, you get Intimidate, you switch out, Intimidate again, weave in a Parting Shot, all these kinds of things, you can really just waste the Calyrex's Dynamax, waste the Trick Room turns, and then they are just a sitting duck at the end of Trick Room and their Dynamax. So if you can play Intimidate Cycling extremely well, it is very good against this team. And then next is Burns. So whether this is Torkoal, Burning Jealousy. Torkoal's great in other ways too, of course, just dropping fat eruptions. Torkoal, Burning Jealousy, Will-O-Wisp, one of the hardest to type moves ever. These kinds of things are really good at shutting down Calyrex if you can weave the burn onto them. It's easier said than done, but burns really weaken Calyrex. And then next is a little bit taking going away from the defensive options that I just named. This next one is Immense Hyper Offense. Calyrex, Ice, and Mimikyu cannot keep up with like insane hyper offense attacks in certain situations. These are things like Sun Charizard. These are things like Water Spout Kyogre, and these are things like Calyrex Shadow. Okay, these Pokemon, while extremely bulky, cannot afford, they need to get the Trick Room up. Remember I talked about like against Kyogre, is like, well, if you can get the Trick Room up, it's great, but you might just get completely washed out by certain attacks. And this is what I'm talking about, is if you can lead massive hyper offensive attacks and just start blasting holes in the Trick Room team, they can't get the Trick Room set up. So immense hyper offensive options are a good counter to these Trick Room teams. And then I do have a list of specific Pokemon I think are quite strong against this core. I think Torkoal is great. I think Rotom Heat. Now Rotom Heat is a great Sun counter, but I honestly think it is very good against the Calyrex Ice cores as well. I think Charizard is fantastic. If you can protect it, if you can get the Sun up, or if you cannot let them get up Trick Room, Charizard with G-Max Wildfire, stuff like that is just going to obliterate the team. And then once again, Calyrex Shadow. I think if you can play it well, protect it, you can knock out everything you need to do, and then some. After hearing a message from chat, I totally agree with this, and I do want to let you guys know that I think well-played Steel types can be a big problem for Calyrex. You do have the Max Quake option from Calyrex, right? But these Steel types are going to most popularly be a weakness policy set. They're going to be Max Steel Spiking, boosting up their defense even further, stuff like that. So they are a little more volatile. They're going to have to take Max Quakes. They're going to have to take attacks from Mimikyu, maybe get burnt and stuff. But I think that they can be very scary. So things like Metagross, things like Solgaleo, and things like Stakataka. Next up, guys, is another very common legendary core is the Solgaleo plus Bulldoze option. Now, Solgaleo has full metal body. It's the same as clear body. So, a Spectre will Bulldoze. Activate its weakness policy. It won't get its speed dropped. Spectre cannot get faked out because it is a ghost type. So there are not a bunch of options to stop this from happening. And then Solgaleo can just start KOing your team, boosting up his stats even further with Steel Spikes, Max Quakes, you name it. If you have answers to Solgaleo, the matchup feels pretty good, but if you do not, the matchup can feel very, very scary, honestly. So let's get into it. The first thing I'd like to say is Tailwind / extremely speedy teams. Faster than Spectre. So what do I mean by this? Things that can go fast, KO the Spectre prior. Things like Regieleki can come in super hot, drop a Electro Web to, maybe it's not going to drop Solgaleo's speed, sure, but it'll drop Spectreer's speed, and then maybe your partner can then outspeed Spectreer and KO it. Or you just Tailwind with some crazy hyper offense stuff. We'll actually get into that. That's a little bit later in the thing. But yeah, so let me put these down. Regieleki, Electro Web. Zacian outspeeds these guys. Dragapult, Airstream option is insanely good too. Calyrex Shadow is always very scary, and then Urshifu Dark can actually just sucker punch the Spectreer's Bulldoze. Now, Spectreer is really good because of all the support options it has. Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Snarl. So yeah, they might just outsmart you and be like, well, I'm not gonna get sucker punched by Urshifu, I'm just gonna burn your ass, and then we're good. But these are great options to think about into this team. And then next is Solgaleo is problematic after the weakness policy proc. I mean, try your absolute best to just not let the weakness policy get procced or avoid it. Do not let it proc. Avoid procking it yourself. This is super obvious, but the thing is that Solgaleo with its ability can't have its stats lowered. You can't just be like, okay, I'm gonna proc it, but then I'm gonna, you know, Cycle Intimidates or stuff like that. It's just not an option against Solgaleo, and that's the reason why it's even viable in the first place. So please avoid activating that weakness policy at all costs. Now, there are some very niche options. I don't exactly recommend these, but things like Haze, that's an option that can actually remove stats off of Solgaleo with the full metal body. So there's Haze, and then Burn, but I want to say, but it's not as helpful if you let the weakness policy proc. Because effectively, if you burn the Solgaleo, but you let it get the weakness policy proc, it's as if it's at neutral attack. Burn is effectively putting a Pokemon at -2, and then weakness policy is putting a Pokemon at +2. So that's how you have to think about it. Burn isn't quite as good. So keep that in mind. Another thing, guys, is you're seeing a trend here. You're seeing why some of these teams are so good that we've seen at the top. Massive hyper offense options. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Sun Charizard. I'm talking about Kyogre Waterspout, and I'm talking about Calyrex Shadow. Okay, it's very obvious why we bring these up, is they really just shut down and pop a lot of these legendaries when they think they're safe. Solgaleo will get absolutely roasted by these attacks. Sun's gonna kill it in one hit, easy clap. Waterspout's gonna do like over half, and then you've got your Dynamax in the back waiting. Calyrex Shadow is just going to murder Solgaleo. But Spectreer is very scary for Calyrex Shadow. Protect the Solgaleo, Snarl. Protect, Shadow Ball. Protect Bulldoze, and then Bulldoze again. I don't know, there's lots of like crazy options, but these are things that really punish Solgaleo teams, is the massive hyper offense. And then I want to highlight Charizard specifically, because it is immune to Bulldoze, and it's faster than Solgaleo. So I think Charizard is an immensely hard Pokemon for Solgaleo to see. Now, these Solgaleos are usually running like Max Rockfall for this exact Pokemon, but I don't know, you could just die. Solgaleo could literally just get KO'd by Charizard, and there's nothing you can do about it. Even if you are, you know, have Max Rockfall or whatever. So I think Charizard specifically dodging Bulldoze and then hitting the Solgaleo being faster is a big highlight Pokemon that I wanted to talk about. We've already gone over the most popular heavy-hitting legendaries, right? So we're going to get into some of the more niche, yet still strong and scary in certain situations legendaries. So let's go over Dialga. I think Dialga has lost a lot of popularity because of a few very big weaknesses that it does have. And it is something that you still need to respect. Dialga is great because it is a flex Trick Room setter. It is a premier weakness policy holder. I think it's very similar to Calyrex Ice. In my opinion, probably a little bit weaker, but still deserves the respect as a Trick Room setting legendary. So I think that this Pokemon has huge weaknesses because it is weak to everything sun related. Genuinely, it is weak to everything sun related. Like if you take the popular sun teams, Groudon, it gets bodied. Torkoal doesn't like it. Venusaur gets bodied. Charizard gets bodied. Grimmsnarl with Spirit Break screens, hates it. And Eerie Impulse Porygon 2, hates it. Dialga is literally weak to every single mon on Sun. And that's brutal. Sun is one of the best teams in the format. And if you're running a Pokemon that's not very good into it, you're literally going to have problems. So all those things that I said. Next is stat drops. I think that this is the biggest reason why Dialga is really hard to get to function. It is extremely weak to things like Eerie, Impulse, P2, Snarl, Parting Shot, Incineroar, Snarl, Umbreon, Screams. Okay, the thing is like, even with weakness policy getting set up, stuff like that, which it's easier said than done to proc it. It doesn't have an amazing like side proc option that's weak to something like Draining Kiss from Comfy, or Volt Switch from Raichu, or Aqua Jet. These kinds of things. It's weak to like Mach Punch. That's about it. Like the side procs are harder to do. Bulldoze, yes, but it's easier said than done. And Dialga gets its stats dropped really, really easily, and it can just completely waste its Dynamax. Incineroar is not going down to a Max Quake. I hate to break it to you. And it's going to Snarl you. It's slower than you in Trick Room. It's going to Max Quake. It's going to Parting Shot, Snarl, all these kinds of things. It can fake out your Trick Room setup. Incineroar is very good against Dialga, and it's a huge problem. So that's a big one. And then, yeah, I'm honestly going to highlight Incineroar. Fake out TR option. Snarl, Parting Shot, slower in TR. It's really brutal. It's really brutal. Incineroar, maybe it's like, oh, but it's a dragon. It's not weak to fire, blah, 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 blah. It's like, nope, Incineroar is disgustingly good against Dialga. And then usual bulk things. Usual bulk. Max Quakes, screens like I mentioned up there. These can really just... Dialga can't bust through them. That's the problem with Dialga, is that it doesn't do quite enough damage, and its stab attacks are not super effective against very many of the relevant legendaries in the format. Steel and Dragon do not hit Zacian, Kyogre, Groudon, Calyrex Shadow for super effective. Steel for Calyrex Ice, sure, but that's about it. So, I don't think Dialga is too hard to beat, but I think you should respect the option nonetheless. Guys, next up is Yveltal, and I just want to give you guys a PSA that I literally think Yveltal might come back in popularity for this event, because I do think it's really scary. It puts out an immense amount of damage with Dark Aura boosted Dark attacks off of special attack Dark Pulse, lower special defense, just totally knocks things out. But it does have a lot of the common weaknesses that I'm going to talk about, but let's go. The first thing, it's the one that I've said a lot of, is massive hyper offense attacks. Once again, Sunzard, Kyogre Spout, and Calyrex is actually not good against this, but stuff like that. I think that if you have these big hyper offensive options, Yveltal just kind of folds to it, unfortunately. Charizard outspeeds it, Kyogre can easily outspeed it with the right support, and Yveltal needs kind of a turn or two to get going. It wants that max airstream up. It wants to drop your special defense with max darkness. It wants to get its weakness policy potentially procced from its partner, Raichu or Comfy. So massive hyper offense can really shut down Yveltal. And then obvious thing is that, okay, this is a little bit of a not so obvious thing, but most people know that most of Yveltal are special attackers. Reason why is Dark Aura drops special defense, and Intimidate is everywhere. So just know that most of Yveltals are special attackers. So Light Screen and Snarl are amazing options, for sure. The bulky support dark types that I talked about a lot. These are important. These are very good against Yveltal. Grimmsnarl, Umbreon, and Incineroar. They can fake out the support. They can Snarl. They can Parting Shot. They can set up screens. And Yveltal can't hit them with the most powerful move that it wants to hit you with. The Max Darkness. Well, it can. It's just not going to do very much damage. Like, it's kind of forced to click the Max Airstream. and it's really not going to do as much. All of these Pokemon, I think every single one of those Pokemon can survive a weakness policy procced max Airstream from Yveltal. Incineroar, Umbreon, and then Grimmsnarl behind Light Screen. Yeah, I think they all genuinely do. So the bulky dark types. Yveltal loves having the bulky dark types on his team, but he also doesn't like seeing them on the other side of the team. So pretty much stat drops in general, just like I typed up there. I am unfortunately kind of repeating myself, but things like Eerie, Impulse, P2 are extremely annoying to beat. And then Snarl, like I already said. So just keep Eerie, Impulse, P2 in the back of your head. That's a really scary one for Yveltal to deal with. And then, yeah, I talked about the dark types, and then obvious one, but don't let the weakness policy proc. Things like Follow Me, Fake Out Faster Than Comfy, etc. Stopping Raichu from setting up the weakness policy is way easier than stopping Comfy from activating the weakness policy. So it is something you need to stop, though. Whether it's a Follow Me, whether it's Hyper Offense, you just kill the Yveltal, you let them set it up, and then you KO them. It's something you need to be aware of. It's a very popular item on Yveltal because Yveltal is bulky, but it's not that fast. You can abuse a base 99 speed if you build your team to, you know. Can abuse base 99 speed with nature. So, yeah. But the reason why I think Yveltal is kind of going to come back is that it's bulky. I think people can build their teams really well. And then I think it kind of claps a lot of the more come-up legendaries, such as Calyrex Shadow and Calyrex Ice, Solgaleo. I think it does really well against those. So I honestly think that we should be prepared for Yveltal, at least somewhat. Guys, we've got our 2 last legendaries. They are more niche options, but still should be respected somewhat. I think Ho-Oh has an amazing Sun matchup. And then it has an amazing Steel matchup as well. It might even be good against Calyrex Ice too. Calyrex Ice. Yeah. But Ho-Oh is unfortunately weak to a lot of these common cores. I think it has a ton of weaknesses. I think if you can build an amazing Ho-Oh team, it can do great. But it has a lot of problems, and I think that we can build our teams to beat it. The first thing is base 90 speed is very abusable. Okay, Ho-Oh is only base 90 speed. Things like Landorus that intimidate it and drop fat max rock falls can just rip it apart. So let's just put Lando T. Let's put Regieleki. Stuff like that. You can really beat this down with Tailwind. If they have their own Tailwind, they're still too slow. It has big weaknesses to Electric and Rock. Base 90 is very abusable, so just keep that in mind. Just know that Ho-Oh can never go faster than that unless it's Choice Scarf, and yeah, you're probably gonna do pretty good if it's if it is Choice Scarf. But then it has huge problems with Incineroar. Wow, it's almost like Incineroar is just like totally godlike. Incineroar, Intimidate, Fake Out, Parting Shot, etc. Ho-Oh does not want to get intimidated. Its damage output drops immensely. And then you can have Max Quake on there, but it's not going to kill Incineroar. You're going to get Parting Shotted. Ho-Oh likes to do a lot of things out of Dynamax. Things like Recover. Things like Fish for the Sacred Fire Burn. And Ho-Oh not Dynamaxed into Incineroar feels like even weaker a lot of the time. So Incineroar is extremely good against Ho-Oh in pretty much every way, shape, or form. And then Pokemon like Regieleki, Thundurus, and Zapdos, they pretty much, Zapdos, control the pace of the match. These are 3 Pokemon that hit Ho-Oh for super effective, control the speeds very easily, even around Lightning Rod, and have a faster max Airstream. So all of these Pokemon are very good against Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh does not like playing against it in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, Ho-Oh has a poor matchup in all of these really popular and strong electric types. I think Coalossal and Kyogre teams are extremely good against Ho-Oh. They just murder it with Water Spout or murder it with G-Max Volcalith. So these are amazing cores and options against Ho-Oh. You don't even need a specific tech. If you're running Cole, you should have a good matchup against Ho-Oh. If you're running Kyogre, you probably should have a good matchup against Ho-Oh as well. So Yeah, and then the next thing is Spores, Yawns, Yams. Unfortunately, Ho-Oh doesn't have enough punch to like break through these mons that put you to sleep. Cobra Berry Amoonguss, Cobra Berry Venusaur, Sleep Powder Venusaur, etc. Can just knock out the Ho-Oh. I mean, can just completely incapacitate it. And that's a problem. But now, a lot of these problems are addressable with items. But that's honestly where one of the big problems lies, is Ho-Oh can only address one of these issues with items. And what I mean by that is Lumberry, Goggles, Wakanberry, White Herb, etc. You can make you better against Intimidate, but then you're weak against the other things. You can stop the Sleep Powders, but you're weak against the other things. You can put the Wakanberry to hopefully beat the electric types, but you're weak to the other things. So Ho-Oh has a lot of weaknesses, unfortunately. It can, you know, I think it could potentially go far with an amazingly built team. And if you run into those exact matchups you want, the Steels, Sun, Calyrex Ice, it can work, but this is why Ho-Oh isn't too popular. It's because of these weaknesses right here. Here's Palkia time, ladies and gentlemen. Chat is getting hyped for Palkia, but I want to put that Palkia has very similar weaknesses to Dialga. Honestly, I think Palkia is a more offensive, better option than Dialga, but it has very similar weaknesses. Going into detail of what I mean by it is stronger than Dialga. Its Stab Water move hits a lot more Pokemon for better damage, but it also sets up the rain and then effectively boosts its damage every turn after when the rain is up. Dialga cannot do that. So I kind of think that that Palkia hits harder. I also think that Palkia runs more offensive kind of EV spreads, more special attack, more speed, while Dialga kind of has to focus on bulk a little bit more. So that's what I mean when I say that Palkia is more offensive. And it doesn't use the Trick Room option as often due to its speed, due to it being a little bit harder to set up, that kind of stuff. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about Palkia in that certain way. Now, when I say it has very similar weaknesses to Dialga, I am talking about Snarl, I am talking about Eerie Impulse, and I am talking about Screams. It is relatively hard for Palkia to bust through these things. It's just like Dialga. You could be a weakness policy, sure, but honestly, sometimes like you can't really stop these things from happening. But Palkia does have a much better matchup into Incineroar. Dialga does not get Stab on its max Quake, and Incineroars are most likely going to be running Shucka Berry instead of Pusho Berry more commonly, right? So honestly, Palkia does have a better matchup against Incineroar specifically, but it is still weak to these options of Snarl, Eerie Impulse, and Screens. These are things that you have to keep in the back of your mind. And then another one is one of the papas of the format is G Max Venusaur. It resists the Water Stab. It doesn't take that much damage from whatever Palkia wants to hit with it. Palkia could be running some Flamethrower or Fire Blast. It does kind of dis-synergize with the fact that it wants Rain Up in a lot of situations, that kind of stuff. I guess it gets Ice moves too, but honestly, Venusaur is a great option. Puts it to sleep. Vine Lash does a ton of damage. It kind of wins that one-on-one bulk fest, gets the Vine Lash up. I think Palkia just has a relatively poor head-to-head against Venusaur, and that's something that you need to watch out for. But Palkia has a great matchup into Sun, all the other Sun Pokemon. So there is that kind of back and forth, but I think Venusaur does a lot. And then I just think we can kind of lump this up with bulky grass types in general. I think things like Amoonguss can be problematic for Palkia as well. In a standard moveset, you're probably running Protect 3 attacks, maybe Trick Room 3 attacks, Protect Trick Room 2 attacks, and usually you don't have the option that you want to hit Amoonguss while hitting all the other stuff in the format really well. So, yeah, bulky grass types, getting put to sleep, Sleep Powder, that kind of stuff. Lots of Pokemon are weak to that, but yeah, I think stat drops and bulky grass types are Palkia's biggest weakness. Guys, thank you guys so much for watching our Series 8 Legendary Breakdown. I really hope that this is going to help you build the perfect team for your Players' Cup for qualifying run, bebe. So, come back and refer to this video when you are building your team. I think that this video was meant to help kind of you know, get those extra pieces in place for your team. I hope you guys learned something, and best of luck in the Players Cup, guys. Please like the video and subscribe to this channel. It goes so much farther than you would ever know in supporting a smaller YouTuber such as myself, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.